So this happened to me almost 7 years ago now. I should give some background info before getting into things. At the time this all happened, I was around 16 years old, and I had a friend that I'll call Karen, who's dating a boy named John. At this point in time, Karen and John had been dating for maybe 6 months, and after going out with Karen and John on many occasions, they decided that they wanted me to hook up with John's friend, Cameron. At this point in time, I had met Cameron in person once. He was pretty nice, and I gave him my social media, and we had chatted a couple of times. It's important to note that he didn't have my number or even know where I live. Now it's time for the story. Fast forward to one night, maybe a week or two after I met Cameron. I'm laying in bed and it's about 2 or 3 in the morning, and I get a call from an unknown number. Thinking, why the hell is an unknown number calling me at this time at night? I decide to answer it and see who it is. So I answer the phone and say hi, and a man responds saying hi back. Since I didn't recognize the voice on the other end, I asked the person who they were. Instead of giving me an answer to this question, the man on the line tells me to look outside my window. Thinking this is probably a prank call, I tell the man to F off and I hang up the phone. Once I did this, the number called back again, but I didn't answer it. The person then proceeds to call me another 4 times until I finally answer the phone, which again, I ask who the heck is calling. This time the person responds and tells me that one of my friends gave him my number and that I'm the guy he's been talking to. At this point, my stupid 16-year-old mind is trying to rationalize this, and the only person I can think of is Cameron. Before I can say anything to this person, he again tells me to look outside my window, and I begin hearing noises outside the window. Now I should mention that my room is right beside my parents' room, and being stupid, my first thought was that this fool was going to wake them up, and that I'd never hear the end of it. Let me tell you, that thought soon turned into the last thing I would worry about that night. Anyway, at this point, I'm also starting to get creeped out, and I'm thinking to myself, if this is Cameron, and Karen did give him my number, how the hell would he know where I lived? So I reply to the man and say, Cameron? The man says yes, and tells me to look out my window. I reply telling him to go home and hang up the phone again. Weirded out, I decide I'm going to get up and go into my basement and call Karen, so that hopefully my parents don't hear me talking from my room. This is really important because to get into my basement, I have to pass a door that is partially made of glass. So I get downstairs and call her, and she answers, clearly half asleep. I tell her about the unknown call, which I'm assuming is from Cameron, and how he is telling me to look out my window because he's outside, and on top of this, that I can hear someone out there. Karen, now clearly awake, tells me that she has never given Cameron my number or address, and calls John quickly from her home phone to see if maybe he did. At this point, John answers and tells Karen that not only had he not given my information out, but he is with Cameron. So they tell me if someone is outside, I need to hang up and call the police immediately. So I hang the phone up, and before I can even go to dial for anyone, I get another call. Guess who? Unknown number. So I stupidly answer again, and before I get a word in, the man tells me that he knows I'm in my basement, and that he saw me walking by my back door. Now I'm clearly disturbed, as I did just walk by my back door to get downstairs, so I know someone is actually outside. Again, before I could say anything, the man told me to come outside. So stupidly, I tell the person I'm calling the police and I hang up the phone. Why I hadn't called the police at this point, I really don't know. Probably because I was 16, stupid, and literally in panic mode. Not more than a minute later, I get another call. I answer again, and the man tells me to come outside or he's coming inside to get me. Clearly panicking at this point, I have this deep gut feeling that if I go outside, I'm never coming back. However, I do have to go by the door again to get back upstairs, and that was equally terrifying me. So I hung up the phone again and mustered up the courage to run upstairs, because the last place I wanted to be was in a part of my house where no one else was in. I keep getting more calls. Unknown number, unknown number. Again, my 16-year-old self stupidly answers. This time the voice on the phone sounds shook. It says to me that police stopped him outside my house, and that they want to speak to me to make sure I know him. And the phone then gets pressed off to someone who identifies himself by name, which I no longer remember, and asks if I know the man outside my house. He says my house number and street. I quickly tell the voice on the phone I have no idea who the person calling me is, and I hang up the phone. I never got another call again. However, I did sit there all night holding a bat, and I had problems sleeping for months. I should also mention that I didn't have many friends at this point in my life, and looking back on this night, I thought maybe this was a prank taken too far. However, I begged a few friends I did have for months to admit that one of them was the person who pulled this off. And to this day, they all insist none of them did this. So whatever got this person to stop calling me, thank you God. Back in 2007, shortly after my 15th birthday, my mom was out of town for a few days on a business trip. My mom and I lived alone in a small house in a neighborhood that was on the sketchier end of decent, and that fact combined with her paranoia about me being home alone, longer than 4 or 5 hours, meant that I had to stay over at a friend's house while she was gone. This friend's house was across the street and over one house from my own, and the place my mom was going was only about 2 hours away. And I had gotten a bug up my ass about being treated like the young woman that everyone kept calling me. So, for the week leading up to the trip, I was moaning and groaning about being old enough to take care of myself, and insisting that I could just check in with my friend's parents every now and then. But in truth, my house was pretty creepy at night, even when my mom was there with me, and I'd found out the day my mom was scheduled to leave, that my friend had somehow gotten her hands on a PlayStation 3, so it didn't take me too long to get over being unfairly babysat. At around 11 on the last night I was there, we ended up back inside my friend's room, screwing around with the brand new flip phone that I had gotten for my birthday. Her parents had gone out hours earlier after buying us a pizza for dinner and probably weren't going to be back for at least an hour, and we'd gotten bored downstairs with her one PS3 game that we had been playing for days already. It was too late to call any of our friends, but I knew my mom was coming home tomorrow morning at some ungodly hour, and I knew that she had this thing about her answering machine. No matter how tired she was, no matter where she had gotten back from, if there were any messages on the answering machine, she listened to all of them. So being the bored 15-year-olds that we were, my friend and I decided to leave a message or two for my mom to find in the morning. We called my home phone and put it on speaker, cracking up and trying to figure out what our message was going to be about. It normally took 5 rings for a call to go to the machine, but on the 3rd ring, the phone picks up and we hear, "Hello?" The voice sounded like it belonged to some 60-year-old guy who had been smoking for the last 40 years of his life. But even past that, there was this menace to his voice. Can't describe it exactly, but it sounded very cold and very dangerous. Sort of voice where if you heard it on the street, you'd want to get away from that person immediately. I looked at my friend, and her eyes were huge and her face was completely pale, and I'm sure I didn't look any better. Neither of us could get it together enough to say anything in response. "Hello?" he said again. There was a pause, and I tried to squeak out something along the lines of, "Who the hell are you, and why are you in my house?" But then he said in a very low voice, "You shouldn't have called." There was some sort of slam and the call disconnected. I immediately dropped my phone and proceeded to freak out, as did my friend. She asked me if I knew who that was, and I said no. Of course, I didn't know the creepy-ass guy answering my phone at 11 at night. We checked the call log to see if we'd accidentally called the wrong number, but no, it was the right number. We were so shaken up that we couldn't immediately figure out who we should call or what we should do. If we should call the cops or call my mom, or even call my friend's parents, or even just run around making sure all the doors and windows were locked or what. So we ended up sprinting around my friend's house, double checking every lock we could check, while gasping out what happened to my friend's parents on the phone. So for 10 minutes, we were huddled in the far corner of my friend's room, basically under her bed, jumping every time we heard the house settle or one of our legs scraped on the carpet. You can imagine how freaked out we were when her parents rushed in and started rattling at her bedroom door, forgetting that it was locked on their orders. The cops got to my house not too long after her parents got home. To be honest, I don't really remember a lot of the specifics about what the cops were doing, mainly because I refused to step foot outside the house, but I remember that they asked my friend and I a lot of questions. We couldn't really give them a lot of information, sadly. Unfortunately, we called them from my friend's room, which was in the way back of her house, away from where we would have been able to see my house. And the dude with the creepy smoker's voice isn't a very helpful description to go off of when looking for someone. There wasn't really anything messed up and nothing was taken. But our wall-mounted corded phone was hanging off the hook and the phone base itself was cracked, like it had been smashed with something. Both my mom's room and my room also had some stuff moved around and displaced. like someone was going through our drawers and the stuff in our rooms. My mom got called at some point during all of this and managed to get home that night, very tired and very freaked out about what happened. The cops investigated the incident, but never came up with any answers. We weren't doing too well financially at that point, but we still managed to move across town within a few months of this happening. For the months between that night and the day we moved though, I slept like shit and I had really bad nightmares. I also flat out refused to be alone in the house, even if it was just for a couple of minutes. And I started getting really obsessive about double checking the locks, a habit which has stuck around since this happened. And now that I've written this all out, I remember that there's one thing I haven't told anyone about all of this. Mostly because at the time, I thought that the whole thing might get blamed on me if I said anything. Earlier that day, I'd gone back over to my house to get a notebook of mine, full of writing that I wanted to show my friend. Nothing was obviously wrong as far as I could tell. The front door was locked when I got to it, and no signs of any tampering with it or any weirdness by the door. No noises from any part of the house. But the minute I stepped inside, something just felt off. It was really, really quiet, and I was getting chills all up and down my spine, and I had goosebumps all over. I tried to will myself just to get over it, to go back to my room and just get the notebook, but I couldn't make myself take more than a few steps into the house. I was too creeped out. I locked the door and I ran back across the street. When I got back to my friend's house, I kind of felt like an idiot, of course. Was I really such a wimp that I couldn't walk through my own house when it was empty? But looking back, well, who knows? Maybe my gut was right about something just not being right. It freaks me out even thinking about what could have happened if I'd ignored it and walked further inside. I've thought back on that moment a lot too, wondering if maybe I left the door open when I left, but there's just no way. I distinctly remember locking the deadlock and looking over my shoulder the whole time, because I had that burning, crawling feeling on the back of my neck that you get when you're being watched. And after the creepy call, I checked and I had my keys in my backpack. This started last Friday and it's been going on for the past week. I am part of a church Facebook where you post your needs and people will fulfill if they can. Or you post something you have to offer and people reply if they need it. Take a penny, leave a penny style. Someone posted on Facebook that they needed an item that I happened to have, so I replied stating I had one that they could have. They sent me a PM and we started to arrange for pickup. The guy then told me he had posted for a friend and it was his friend who would be taking it. We had to change pickup days because of some scheduling conflict, so he said a different friend would be picking it up, because that was who was available to pick up that day. He asked for my phone number so they could let us know when they were on their way. I don't know if it's a crazy coincidence or not, but within 1 hour of giving my phone number, I got the first phone call. My phone rang from a restricted number, which I normally ignore, but for some reason I answered. There was a man on the line talking in a low, deep, slow voice. Him. You call for the service? Me. Oh no, I'm sorry. I think you have the wrong number. No, I don't. You need the massage and the giant, you know what. Me, no? Then he hung up. At that point, I kind of laughed, thinking it was some teenage boys pranking me. But the more I thought about it, the more I was a little bothered. There was no giggling and no laughing, like no amusement at all in the man's voice. Not only that, but I'm completely unlisted, so my phone number isn't available anywhere. I shrugged it off and continued on my weekend. I somewhat forgot all about the instance until on Tuesday, a blocked number called me twice. I didn't answer either time and immediately got nervous and remembered to call on Friday when I saw the blocked number. On Wednesday, the number called me again, and this time I answered, thinking it was someone from my work. My computer was with our IT center, and it was this creepy guy again. This time he got straight to the point. I answered, hello, and he replied, I'm going to F you and your you-know-what. I asked how he got my number and he hung up. It was definitely the same voice from the call on Friday. I remember that the first call came within an hour of giving out my phone number to the guy on Facebook, and immediately I got creeped out because I also gave that person my address so they could come pick up the item. About 20 minutes after that phone call, my phone rang again with the blocked number, but I didn't answer. I decided at this point I want to confront the man on Facebook. I had given my number and address out of kindness in the midst of giving him an expensive item that I happened to have an extra of, And almost immediately after doing so, I started getting these obscene calls. So I wrote to him on Facebook, explained that I've been getting these calls, and asking if he shared my number with anyone. He wrote back apologizing, saying he was sorry I had to go through his friend, and said he gave my number to the two guys. The first one who was supposed to pick up, Jose, and then to the second one who ended up picking up because of the reschedule, Mike. He gave me their names and phone numbers and asked that I please let him know if I find out they are behind it. My husband and I decided at this point that I need to download a call tracking app. I found one that will unblock blocked numbers, so I got it to try to use it next time they call. They didn't call at all the next day, but just about an hour ago, I got another call from them, and unfortunately, the app doesn't work. It just shows up, 9999. I answer and the conversation goes along the lines of, "Him. Who's this?" "Me. No. Who is this?" "Him. You know who I am." "No, I don't. Stop calling me." "Him. But I want to taste you." "Okay, how'd you get my number?" "Him. But don't you want me?" "No, I don't want you. Stop calling me. Who is this? Is this Jose or Mike?" "Him. Is this Michelle?" "No, my name is not Michelle. If you're trying to reach Michelle, you're calling the wrong person. Who is this?" "You know who I am," he says. "How the hell did you get my number?" Then he hangs up. At this point, I don't really know what to do. I keep telling myself it's just some idiot prank calling me, and they keep calling back because they get an answer. But in my gut, I don't feel like it is. There's no amusement in his voice at all. No laughing, nothing. Just a low, slow, deep voice. The tracker didn't work, and he didn't respond at all when I gave the names the guy from Facebook gave me. If it is the guys from Facebook, they also know where I live, and that terrifies me. Not only for my own safety, but I also have 2 kids under 5 years old, and I babysit another 3-year-old during the week. I have small kids I'm responsible for. Part of me feels like it might not be them, but if it's not, it's an insane coincidence that the calls started the same day I gave him my number. When I was 18, almost 10 years ago, I had a phone call that completely changed my life. I got woken up at almost 6 a.m. by an unknown number. I figured it was my boyfriend, now husband, since his phone usually showed up as the famous unknown number. He usually called me before going to work around 7:30 a.m., but sometimes he'd call me at 6 o'clock if he wanted to talk to me while waking up. I answer and he says, "Hey baby," and I'm still half asleep but start talking. He tells me he has a little problem and that he's feeling really, So being 18 and just having started dating him recently, let's just say I was very willing to, So we start, and he tells me how he absolutely loved seeing me last weekend and how good I looked, and how he absolutely loved what I wore. He basically described what we had done during the weekend. If I remember properly, his parents weren't home for the weekend, and we had the house and the car to drive around. And we had lots of fun, obviously. And he was saying how much he loved some of the things I did to him. I replied. I was more and more awake, and we were having a really good time. Then I noticed it was almost 7 a.m., which is the time where he usually takes his shower and eats, and gets ready to go out the door. And I basically asked him, "So this is fun and all, but aren't you going to get ready for work?" This is giving me chills typing it, but he basically replied, no. I think I'll skip work today. How about I just come over?" Now the thing is, by then I was pretty awake, and although the voice that was talking to me was very similar to my boyfriend's, something threw me off. My boyfriend doesn't say the, no, like he did. Besides, I knew that unless he was sick, my boyfriend would never skip work because he was scheduled on shifts, and missing a shift was a big deal that could get him fired. I kind of froze, but he noticed it, and so he said, "Oh babe, yeah, you're right. I should start getting dressed. So you want me to come over?" By then, I swear that his voice was back to my boyfriend's voice, and I just felt silly. So what if he wanted to skip a day at work? Maybe he just really wanted to see me. So I tell him, "Yeah, sure, come over. It will only be us here." And he replied, "Great." Then he asked, "Where is it?" Wait, what? Obviously my boyfriend knows where I live. He had been coming over for weeks now. I laughed it off and I told him, "Ha, you know where it is." That's when he laughed. And his laugh was absolutely not my boyfriend's laugh. I instantly told him, "You're not my boyfriend, are you?" he said. "Can you just hang on, please? I need to grab something." Meanwhile, I get a text from my boyfriend. I figure that maybe, just maybe, this is a sick joke. Maybe he executed this joke perfectly. Maybe he's sick and his voice doesn't sound the same. The text from my boyfriend said, "I'm at the subway, going to work now, love you." I texted him saying, "Why are you texting me? We're talking right now." At which point, my actual boyfriend called. He was very confused at first and figured someone had hacked into his MSN. When I told him it was by phone, he reassured me that he absolutely did not call me, and that whoever it was not him. He had to go as a subway train was there, but said that he would call as soon as he was at work. Then the other guy called back. I picked up and I asked him, "Who are you? What do you want?" I pretty much went crazy on him. He said that his name was Mike, and that we had met a long time ago, which was impossible because my phone number was fairly recent. That he just wanted to have fun, and that he didn't know I had a boyfriend. I asked him how he knew what I was wearing and what we did, and even how he got my phone number. He just said, "Where are you? Why don't we meet?" At which point I hung up. He called again, but I didn't answer. Within minutes, I had called my mom to tell her what happened, and she told me to change my phone number and not to stay home alone. I changed my number right away, and I also alerted local police. They opened a file, but nothing ever came out of it. I still wonder how he knew what we did and what I was wearing, but my boyfriend swore at the time he would never let any of his friends know all of that. But his parents' house did have lots of windows, and we weren't exactly careful.